Hi everybody, this is Pat here from the Smashing Skull Sessions and welcome to the second episode of the Review Room. I'm joined by Rich B and Rich M, who joined us a few weeks ago as well, lads. Great to have you back again. Have an old chat about some music.
Yes, looking forward to another round.
Exactly. As you can see, guys, we're missing one man. We're missing Tim, who's off on holidays in Spain. So Tim, enjoy yourself, man. And thanks for the track you left us with. We'll have a bit of fun with that one. All right. So, guys, I suppose we kick off with the first track, will we? Get things rolling, because we wanted to talk about another topic, don't we, afterwards? Maybe a bit of Arctangent, Rich?
Yes, absolutely. Both Rich and I will be heading there for the 3 days, although we're far too old and knackered. Well, I am. I can't speak for Rich to camp. So we're cheating and getting a taxi in every day and having a good night's sleep and a shower, because that's how we need to do festivals these days.
That's how you do it when you go past the mid-40s and into your 50s. Yeah, that's the fucking
Yeah.
And you know something? Have you your taxi booked and ordered now for that trip? Will you have it? Because that's a hard place to get in and out of, like.
It is. We did all right last year ad hoc, and we've positioned ourselves in Wells, which is it's actually a city because it's got a cathedral.
Okay.
But I stayed there a few years ago, and it was pretty easy to book a taxi for 3 days. So I'm hoping, obviously, we'll do it a few days in advance. But yeah, you had a bit of a nightmare when you came over, didn't you?
We'll talk about that as well, Richie, in a minute. Yeah. It still haunts me to this day. I can
Your
tell
10-mile hike at 4 a.m. back to Bristol Airport.
Stop. In soaking wet, freezing cold, 2 hours sleep. Oh man, it's one to not to forget anyway. But look, back to the tracks, lads. First track I picked on it is a track from a band called So Hideous. I don't know, have you heard of them before?
No, new to me.
And new to me, lads. Fucking hell. I heard these lads. I heard a song. This track that I'm going to play. And it's been a while since I've had a reaction like I did after listening to this. I was working nights and I was playing this track and it just fucking blew my mind. So everybody else, have a listen to this. This is So Hideous. This is their latest single that came out on the 16th of June. It's called Bright Black Beach. Some blackened hardcore, we'll call it. Here you go, lads. Try this out. So there you have it, guys. That's the first track we're going to review tonight, and that was my choice. We all have a choice, just so you know. That was So Hideous, Bright Black Beach, released on the 16th of June. The lads hail from New York. A new band to me, as I said. When I heard it for the first time, I was working night shift, lads, and I was absolutely fucking poleaxed. It just knocked me sideways. You know, what I found, it reminds me like a Quentin Tarantino film to begin with, or some kind of a Western. You know, that vibe, that slow guitar intro was fucking class. Obviously, when the blast beats come in and then those vocals, just knocked me for six, lads. Tremolo guitaring, absolutely love it. I can't fault this track, which is why I picked it. Have a clue with the lyrics. Don't know what he's saying, which doesn't really matter to me because it's just the whole package, everything about that song, the layers. I love the way it builds. A bit short, granted, a bit short in time, maybe 4 minutes. I could have listened to that for plenty more. Rich, what do you think yourself?
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. Loved the intro to it. Loved the kick into it. It was quite aggressive, quite raw. It was really, I really enjoyed it. For me, I found myself straining to listen to the vocals a little bit. They were possibly just a little bit too low in the mix for me. Don't know why.
Oh, yeah.
It was really quite low. And like yourself, I could have listened to it go round again. It just felt like it cut short. But they're minor things. It was a really good track, and I'll listen to them some more, I think.
Brilliant. Rich M? Rich B?
Well, before I begin, I think I need to put in a bit of a disclaimer here, because 3 of the 4 tracks that we are reviewing are, as we were saying in the intro before we went live, definitely have black in the genre description. And my path here is completely different, I think, from you guys. So I started out with Depeche Mode and the Smiths, in the early 80s. Then discovered goth, and Fields of the Nephilim. Guttural vocals there. So I do them occasionally, and that was my introduction to that style of singing. But then I went shoegaze, then I went back to indie, then I went post-punk, then I discovered Mogwai, and obviously the whole arsenal of post-rock that has happened since. They weren't necessarily the first. There's a debate for you for another episode.
Exactly.
And more recently, thanks to you two guys and obviously visits to Dunk, I've sort of been broadening my horizons into sort of more post and black metal areas, because I like the atmosphere and I like the build. But certainly beyond that is a challenge for me. It's possibly a bit like asking Sir David Attenborough what his favourite tree logging company is. Actually, that might need some work. But yeah, anything with power violence or sludge in the genre tag has me a bit concerned before I've even listened to it.
Okay.
So there you go. There's my disclaimer. As far as this track is concerned,
yes.
You mentioned Tarantino. I'm going Ennio Morricone.
Okay.
Who, Italian composer, no longer with us, but wrote a lot of the scores for, as you mentioned, the spaghetti westerns.
Yes.
In the mid-late 70s, Fistful of Dollars, Few Dollars More, Once Upon a Time in the West. And it absolutely sounds, albeit with a slightly heavier bass line, that it's taken from one of those film scores.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, this is interesting, this is different. And then obviously it explodes with blast beats and that black metal styling that I am becoming gradually quite familiar with.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you two guys, it's quite brief. And then it sort of breaks down again and outros within 4 minutes?
4:06, yeah.
It certainly didn't outstay its welcome. And I have no idea what the rest of their material sounds like, if it's anything similar to this or whether this is a complete outlier. But if they're that experimental and they're introducing sort of orchestral elements to their black metal quite a lot of the time, as hopefully you're going to tell me, Pat, then yeah, I'll definitely be investing a bit more time in them.
Yeah, you absolutely hit the nail on the head, Rich, because I was only waiting to pounce on that. Orchestral, they have so much of it in their music, and there's a couple of tracks, again, just go onto YouTube there, and the name escapes me again at the moment now. And it's like a Quentin Tarantino film, the actual video for the track. But yeah, there's everything. There's trumpets, there's fucking brass, there's strings. Everything is just a wall. It's chaos. but organized chaos, if you know what I mean. It's
Yeah,
I think this track I love, and I'm picking it because it's the latest track. But if I was to pick a track, I probably would have picked something else that you would have liked a lot more. Both of you actually, Rich, as well, like, you know.
How long have they been going, Pat?
About 6 or 7 years. They have maybe 3 albums. I have one already coming. I have one on vinyl. I have a second on the way, and I'm trying to source a third. So yeah, I've really, really taken to these guys big time.
Just on the length of track, because we all mentioned it was short. It's not necessarily a bad thing to have a short track. It's just this felt like it had got more to give if it had come back around again. That's the feeling. We could say about length of track and genre, like we did last time, that there isn't a right length of track. It just felt short.
But I think black metal in general tends to lean towards longer tracks, don't they? You never really hear a black metal track that's 4 minutes, would you? Maybe black metal, but maybe if you go more post black metal, you go.
Certainly black metal itself does a lot of shorter tracks.
Yeah.
I mean, it reminded me, the black metal bit reminded me of, and I think we mentioned these guys previously, Terna or TRNA from Russia.
Yeah, St. Petersburg.
That sort of speeding black metal with blast beats. But, you know, within that or outside of that, they've got the sort of atmospheric stuff that I really love going on as well. Or Show Me a Dinosaur, you know, that kind of style, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It does lean towards that a bit, yeah. Interesting. So all good, I think. Richie, Rich B, sorry. I think you'll find a lot more in their earlier material or their previous albums. I definitely recommend you go check it out. Rich, I just know you're going to love it when you go back and listen to it. I had you sort of in mind when I picked this. I go, fucking Richie's going to love this. And there you go. Look.
Thanks, Pat. I appreciate that.
How it transpires, and we'll see it after, how your track resembles my track in some ways. It'd be interesting.
In some ways.
Yeah. So lads, thumbs up or thumbs down for that one? So Hideous.
Thumbs up for that one.
Thumbs up all the way.
Yeah. I'm definitely on the positive side for that.
Excellent. Great start. So, Richie, we're going to go to next. Rich B. Sorry, what track have you got for us?
Okay, so this is going to be a change up from the other two, or the remaining 2 tracks that we're going to listen to. It's by a Leeds band, Leeds UK, Din of Celestial Birds, which I think was a film, and that's where the name came from. I haven't done my research as far as that's concerned. They're a 5-piece. They've got 3 guitarists, so you can already imagine that for a post-rock band, they're going to pack a punch. I discovered these guys probably a couple of years ago. I think they maybe had either a single or an EP out, if I remember rightly, self-released, I believe. I think they've now been picked up by 1,000 Arms in the US.
That's right.
Not sure about elsewhere. Not sure they're on Dunkers yet, but that probably is only going to be a matter of time.
I like how you said as yet, Richie, there, without flinching.
Absolutely. So this is a track called Downpour. It's the first track, I believe, from their debut album, which is out on the 11th of August. Excellent. Downpour.
Brilliant. Let's give it a listen, lads. So there you have it, guys. That is Dinner Celestial Birds. That's the track Downpour, which came out, I think, the 28th of June. Richie, maybe the single. Yeah, give us your back up your choice for us.
Yeah, so I think, as I mentioned before, we heard a little bit of it. The three guitarists that make up the 5-piece really give this track a right kick up the arse for me. And when it kicks in, it really kicks in. It's only, again, it's quite short for post-rock. It's 5 minutes, which to me, with post-rock, I do find appealing because it cuts out a lot of the pointless noodling that you get sometimes, not mentioning any names. Because that would be controversial. But yeah, in a similar way, I mean, stylistically they sound different, but God is a national appeal for that reason, because they don't tend to have tracks longer than 6-7 minutes. This one clocks in at 5, does its business pretty early with a couple of decent crescendos. I quite like the electronic breakdown, or sort of the breakdown and the electronic accompaniment, which then helps to build it back up again, and then finishes with a plum. So I think in this year, which I think for sort of traditional, I'm going to call it crescendo core. It's a terrible description, but we all know what I mean.
And let's hope we never hear that again, Rich.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it again. You can tell me off. Post-rock with a nice crescendo. Yeah. Sort of, there's a I don't know, there's a window, isn't there, where a lot of post-rock sits, and this is definitely right in the centre of that window. And it appeals for that reason, because this year there hasn't been, for me, certainly I haven't discovered a great deal of post-rock core music that I like. Certainly albums, tracks here and there, but, a lot of the big guns obviously released in the last year or two, so they're on a cycle. So it does seem quite a quiet year. So this sticks out for me as being quality, right up my street for that reason.
And you're right. There's been a lot of singles being dropped this year, I think, rather than albums. I know maybe bands are just slow to get writing because they're so busy, but it is something I'm noticing a lot. When we spoke about Bandcamp, and we'll talk about it another day. We'll be probably talking about it every day we come on. But there's so many singles. When you go through the new releases, no matter what genre you're looking at, maybe maybe it's the way they're going. Bands releasing singles before they drop the album, 2-3 tracks.
It's a whole other discussion about whether people even listen to albums these days, the way they get the music.
True.
Maybe that's for another time. That's a whole different kind of
another topic we're going to keep hold of. Yeah. Rich, what was your feeling on that one?
I liked it. I think Rich bang on. It is everything that's good about post-rock. I myself, coming from a different angle than Rich, a bit different background, can sometimes get lost in some of the post-rock that gets a bit too sort of, Rich said, when you say twiddly, was that the...
Noodly, I think.
Noodly is the correct word. And it can lose me and I can drift away, and I certainly didn't with this. It's calm and loud at the same time, which is what post-rock should be. I thought it was just very good at what it did, and it's got a hell of a riff in it. And for me, I'm really, really looking forward to hearing more from them.
Yeah, you're spot on there, Rich. A lot of post-rock, as good as it can be, sometimes the guitars lack a little bite, don't they?
Yeah.
Maybe it's because the 3 guitarists, Rich, might be half the reason behind it, but there is a bit of heft behind this track for a post-rock band. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think Andy Gill, one of the members. Has he been in bands previously?
He probably has, but he has his own project as well, Wilderness of Mirrors, which is more towards, dare I say, post-black, a lot heavier. So maybe there's your influence to the heavier guitar tone that they have, I love it as well. I seen these guys actually back in January. There was a half dare, was called Celestial Deity and Productions had a show with Mountainscape and Helve itself, Timeless, Dinner Celestial Birds. I'm going to curse myself because I'm missing 2, but it was a fantastic day, lads. And these guys were polished. They were fucking super tight, and I suppose they've got a shot at Arctangent this year, lads, which is well and truly deserved.
Absolutely, yeah. We're going to talk about Arctangent later, but I didn't know when I picked this track that they were playing ATG, and then I was doing my ATG revision, which is much needed, again, for reasons that we'll talk about later with the sheer volume of bands playing this year. And I was delighted to see them on. We are going to have to stay off the beer the night before to a certain extent, because they're on.
First morning, so we should be okay.
Okay. Yes, because we'll have to drive there, so that's okay. Good. Well done, Rich. So we will see them then without a hangover. Excellent. I shall look forward to that.
I just laugh when I hear plans like that about restricting your alcohol intake the night before. It just never happens. That
You've seen this at festivals, haven't you, Pat?
Exactly, yeah.
I don't know why I even bothered mentioning that, because it's almost the inevitable. If you say that, it's almost inevitable that the opposite will happen, isn't it?
There you go. And you meet on that day and you just look at each other and just give the nod. Yes, we know. We say differently. But going back to this track, lads, I got a lot of ranges moments in this track, not specifically their other material, but this track in particular I did. Again, I think they're heavier than ranges. Ranges are a bit prettier, and not that's necessarily a bad thing, but this has a bit more heft for me. Again, I'm not familiar. I've only heard a couple of other tracks, so I'm not hugely familiar with their other stuff. But if the album is along similar lines, it'll be right up there for me in terms of on heavy rotation for the rest of this year. Yeah. Rich?
I was just about to say that actually they are heavier than ranges, because ranges are exactly what sometimes loses me in post-rock. For me, they have enough of that riff, that heft, that loudness to them to keep me there. So I can see the similarities, but these guys to me are much more exciting.
Yeah, I just think that the similarity might be in the way it sort of ebbs and flows. The track, isn't it? That is a very ranges thing to do. Especially in the Ascensionist, that album, like it just brings you up to this beautiful plateau and brings you down again and up again and down. Yeah. So great band. Love the guys. Nice fellas in the planet. Andy Gill, if he's watching. I know he does watch the show, so big shout out Andy boy. That's fantastic stuff.
Keep up the good work, Andy, if that's the case.
Exactly, lads, exactly. So I suppose thumbs up all around again, no doubt there for Din Celestial Birds.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. Glad to bring some light relief to all this black metal that is otherwise going to be inflicted on our audience.
I bet they've never been called light relief before.
Well, things are going to get a whole lot darker, lads, I suppose, so they might as well take a break if they want to grab a coffee or something.
Have a lie down.
Or maybe a box of tissue just to cry into somebody's, because we're going to be going into some seriously dark stuff. Next track, look, Rich, we suppose we'll go with you, will we? Your track, and we'll keep Tim's for last.
Yeah, no problem at all. These are a band called OSTRACA. I think I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
Who are from Richmond and Virginia, who I was aware of about 5 or 6 years ago. They had some stuff out that I was aware of. Really enjoyed it. They've not done anything for 4 or 5 years, as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
This is a sort of comeback. The album Disaster. The track we can listen to is called Stage Whisper.
Nice.
They're a 3-piece, which is interesting considering the sound that they get. Signed to Skeletal Lightning label, and let's hear it.
Oh, sounds promising. I love it. Right, here we go, guys. So this is Richie's choice. This is Stage Whisper from OSTRACA. Right, guys, so there you have it. That is OSTRACA. The song is Stage Whisper, and it comes from the album Disaster, which was released on the 30th of June. And that's Rich Murphy's choice. And Rich, give us a bit of feedback behind it, man.
First time I listened to this, wasn't entirely sure, because the range of styles, it's almost schizophrenic. But the more you listen to this, I just love the track. I think it's excellent. At the beginning, it's so unsettling. It's eerie. It's just a really basic strum and a bass, and you've got no inkling of what's coming. It's such a impressive switch. I don't think there are many tracks I've heard that have such a wide separation in the sounds. The musicianship in it is incredible. The drumming in this track, really, really impressive. There are parts of it where you just have to acknowledge the ability of the musician. I mean, it is really good to listen to. It is the standout track on the album for me.
Okay.
And I just think it's something a little bit different, a little bit challenging for some people on this podcast. But no, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think it's going to be one I'll listen to for a while. Yeah.
I have to say, Rich, I listened to it the first time and I went, whoa, fuck it, this is a bit chaotic. But again, second, third listen, that track absolutely grew me. And no, I just think it is absolutely incredible. It opens similar to So Hideous, the track that I played, I thought, with that slow build. It's sort of like My Sleeping Karma, you know, that type of that style of guitaring that My Sleeping Karma have. That came to mind straight away when I was listening to the intro. And again, sure, look, once it breaks into that black metal fucking, as you schizophrenic, chaotic, just blows your mind. If you're into that type of thing, it has to be said.
And for me, even when it breaks back down again, that bass line that brings it back down, almost a post-rock bass line. It reminded me of We Lost the Sea, bizarrely.
Okay.
Just that bass when it brought it back before going again. And I really enjoyed it.
Again, and even it's so chaotic. There's melody there. There is a melody through this track. Like, you know, it's not just noise for the sake of noise. There is a melody there. There's atmosphere, emotion in it. Again, lyrically, having a fucking clue, just like So Hideous. Don't know what's been said, but it doesn't matter. It's just the vocal adds another layer of sound, which just fits the music perfectly, I think. So yeah, for me, brilliant. I wrote down in my notes here, love the finale, which we never got to play there, but that song just loses itself towards the end. Yeah, it's brilliant. Rich B, we saved you for last because I'm interested, actually, genuinely interested to hear your take on it.
Yeah, well, I've obviously come into this with as open mind as possible, and I was surprised initially because I think Rich had given us a bit of a warning as to what to expect, and it begins almost like a post-rock track. And I'm thinking, okay, for the first couple of minutes or so, I was obviously enjoying it, waiting to see what was going to happen, obviously expecting, or what I thought expecting was going to happen. And then what happened after that, I have absolutely no fucking idea. Either somebody had a power drill at the back of my skull, or there was all kinds of shrieking and all kinds of really fast, distorted guitar playing for a few minutes. And then it broke down again and went all quiet again. And then the ending is absolutely one of the most chaotic things I've heard all year. I mean, it's almost math in its rhythm, and then it blasts off again into orbit. And I came out of it thinking, would I listen to it again? Absolutely no. Being entirely honest with you, because it's way, way out of my comfort zone. Is it interesting music? Is it well played? I agree with you, Rich, in terms of the drumming. Absolutely amazing. And I can absolutely value the musicianship in it. And I tell you what, if either of you said these guys were playing in Manchester or Bristol and I was available, I'd come along, because to experience it live, as with most metal that I've experienced live so far, I love it because it's live music, it's well played, and, you know, these guys would pack an amazing punch, I'm sure. So I'm on the fence in terms of it's for me, but I can give it the thumbs up just from the point of view of it being very, very well done and very interesting.
I was just sorry. Go ahead, Rich.
The fact that you're not going to listen to it maybe again because it's not something you'd head to by choice. But I certainly found, and I get the impression that Pat maybe found as well, that actually on a second listen, it gives you a lot more than that first listen, because you're aware of what's coming in a way.
Yeah. Yes.
So that initial sort of fight or flight response in your head doesn't happen. You're a lot calmer about it. So, but yeah,
great point.
I think sorry, Pat.
No, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I think if I played this to my 3 young children, it'd actually make them cry.
Is that a good or a bad thing, Rich?
Even more so than the music I normally play to them, which is, Mogwai or We Lost the Sea, or where they're close to tears already, but for different reasons.
Yeah, but that music would bring them to tears. This would have them wailing, I would think.
Running for cover, I think. Running for cover. But again, not a bad thing if you're into that kind of thing.
And these 4 tracks that we're reviewing this week, lads, I had these on in the car. Obviously, it was the easiest place to listen to tracks on my own, because you don't get a chance to it. But that has become my favourite track, even though as much as I love So Hideous and I love the track that I brought to the table, this track, Rich, is something special, I think. And again, that's coming from my background, Rich. I can probably appreciate this a bit more than you can, from my background, especially with all the doom metal and death metal I would have listened to. So yeah, brilliant track, brilliant choice, Rich. Love it, love it. Thumbs up for myself and Rich M. Absolute thumbs up, yeah. And last word to you, Rich, again, just to give closure on this one.
Do you know what? I'm going to give it the thumbs up because
Excellent.
Why wouldn't I? I've said, it's not for me, but in terms of how it's put together, it's a good track.
Cool. Brilliant. Right, lads, as you know, we would have had the 4th man here, but he's on holidays, Tim Peenenberg. I hope he's having a great time sipping beer out in the sun and enjoying himself. But he did leave us one of his tracks before he went. This is a band called None. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correct because it is spelled N-O, then N-E underneath. So I'm hoping it's None. The album's a reason to be. Sorry, the album is inevitable. The track is a reason to be. This is depressive black metal. I have one of their albums actually. Life Has Gone On Long Enough. I love that title.
Well, Pat, sorry to interrupt, but I looked them up on Bandcamp.
Yeah, and
there's the term DSBM. So it's not just depressive black metal; it's also suicidal black metal. I'm thinking, crikey, what am I letting ourselves in for here? But so DSBM, I didn't even know that was a term that existed. So apparently that's where they're fitting.
Mm-hmm. Well, we let the music do the talking, lads, will we? Everyone have a listen to this one. Will. The album is inevitable. The track is a reason to be. And this was released on the 30th of June, lads. Have a listen to this. Okay, guys, so there you have it. That was Tim's choice. Fantastic choice, actually. The band is None. The album is inevitable. The track was a reason to be. Depressive black metal, as it's known as. I have their previous album, which I mentioned. It's a 10-minute track. I love the acoustic opening. Black influences all over the place. I love the tempo changes. The fuzzy guitar tone that comes with black metal. I like at times, sometimes it gets a little bit too distorted where it grates a little bit on the ears. Maybe I got that at some stage of this, like, but again, I love how the track is broken down. I love how it's not just one pace throughout. You know, again, we talk about ebbing and flowing, but in this style of music, which is normally pretty linear, yeah, this is a bit different. I love the vocals then. I love how they mix it up. Whispers, screams, fucking someone being strangled, I would assume. I don't know. Yeah, but all hugely atmospheric. And that's what I like about it. It's hugely atmospheric. Not for everybody. It's not for the faint-hearted, I would say. Rich B, what's your take on this one?
Well, I was unfamiliar, obviously, with the term DSBM, or depressive suicidal black metal. So I was fearing the worst before entering into this, having done my research before listening to them for the first time. But I am a fan of the atmosphere and aura that a lot of instrumental black metal conveys.
Yeah.
So this started off fantastically, right in the space that I enjoy. You know, bands like Alcest, Sylvain, however you pronounce them. And when it kicks in, the drumming is quite slow. And there's almost an absence of blast beat. I think there's an accompanying blast beat once or twice within the 10 minutes. That's just one thing I noticed. Yeah. Obviously not a trained ear, but it wasn't absolutely over the top blast beats all the time, which gave it a bit more space to hear the instrumentation, the guitars, the atmosphere. As we all know, I'm not a fan of shrill, shrieked vocals. There is a place for them, absolutely. And I think where he places his vocals is in the right place. It's in the peaks of the music. Again, in the same way that it works for me with Alcest. Albeit I quite like the contrast occasionally with clean vocals as well. And I think that's where I enjoy them most, because you get that contrast and you get them moving into shrieking territory at the point which is most effective, i.e. when the music's building to a climax. But yeah, it didn't lose my attention for 10 minutes. That's the biggest compliment I can give it. You know, for a genre that I'm not 100% comfortable with, it sits, of the 3 black metal tracks that we heard tonight, this is my favourite, because it has that tone and that build and that atmosphere that I buy into with some, not all black metal. It's done really well.
Yeah.
And apparently there are some instrumental tracks on the album. I don't know if they're just ambient interludes or what, but I read that in a review earlier today, and I thought, actually, yeah, that's a reason for me to check them out if I wasn't planning to already.
Yeah, great stuff. Rich Jam?
It was so atmospheric. It was really good. It was bleak. It was minimal. It was tortured in places. It was everything that if you had to sort of depressive black metal, that is exactly what it was. It was a beautiful track. I really enjoyed it. The atmosphere right from the start. Sometimes you have to wait for an atmosphere to build. I don't think it had to build. I think it was there right from the very beginning. I think Rich is right about the drumming. A lot of time with black metal, you just get blast beats. It overpowers everything else, and it didn't. It was used, but it was used well. It was used to make a point, and the rest of it was really well structured. And I thought it was a thoroughly enjoyable track from a band that I'd not come across before. So they're new to me, and I will be checking them out.
So if you were introducing your mum to depressive black metal, Rich, based on the point you made earlier, this would be the one, would it?
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Just thought I made that clear.
Would you have a few glasses of sherry first, Rich, before you'd actually introduce her to this track?
I would hope not, because who knows what happens after a few glasses of sherry listening to
the tears come up flowing, huh? Yeah, look, I think it's a great track too. Looking back at all 4 tracks, I actually can't fault any of them, and I suppose we do want to be as honest and truthful as we can be when it comes to reviewing these tracks. But I genuinely loved all 4. this week. Couldn't pick a favorite. As I said, that post-black, depressive metal, whatever you want to call it, post-hardcore, that dark, aggressive music, that bleak sound, I love it. I could listen to it all day. So I thought we had 3 tracks that ventured into that domain, but they were all not very different, but they were different. They all brought something different to the table, basically, yeah. Anything more to say on those tracks before we move on, Rich?
I was just going to say that all those tracks that you mentioned, they all had similarities. They were all basically the same, but they were all built and structured in a very different way. There were 3 different takes on the same thing.
Last word, Rich B. Anything to add to that before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, despite what I said right at the intro, I actually enjoyed the experience. And obviously there's going to be plenty more, I guess, as we're moving forward. You know, I shall hold my end up in the post-rock and post-metal arena as we move forward, and hopefully you'll help me out occasionally, Pat, with your choices.
Absolutely.
Maybe even Rich will as well, who knows? I know less about Tim's choices, but no, it was an experience. I enjoyed listening to them. I wouldn't necessarily sit down with a pair of headphones and listen to the 3 other bands that I didn't select tonight, but I could see why you guys picked them. And I'll certainly be investigating them a bit more, certainly in the albums that these tracks were a part of, to see, you know, how they evolve as part of that album.
Yeah, I suppose we do want to cover all genres of music too. Like, that's probably key to this show too, isn't it? It's not necessarily a post-rock or a post-metal show. Like, I mean, the review room, we are trying to cover.
Well, that's good news, because I've got some psychedelic trance lined up for the next episode. So,
Don't that one either.
Okay, lads, come here. Thanks for that. So that's the 4 tracks that we've reviewed for you, lads. I hope somebody listened to us, takes interest in them, and goes to Bandcamp and checks them out, because they are 4 great tracks. I won't say all very different, but they are different. But they all bring something to the table. One thing they all do have is atmosphere, lads, and they do have talent in abundance. Right, so there you have it, guys. There's 4 great tracks. Go check them all out on Bandcamp, and don't be afraid to spend a few euros and throw it their way. Right, lads, for the final part of the show, we have a topic to discuss. This week, I want to talk about Arctangent, or should I say we want to talk about Arctangent, because we give Dunk so much airtime here on the Smashing Skull Sessions and the Review Room. It's only fair to mention other good and brilliant festivals that are out there, because there is just so many. But lads, Arctangent, I think, is well deserved of a mention. Would I be right?
Oh, absolutely. I've been going since every year since 2017. Obviously, there was a 2-year break for reasons that we all know about, and it's evolved quite dramatically from its origins. I started going in 2017 because it started to introduce a bit more of the bands and music that I like. It started off very much as a math rock festival, hence the name, you know. So I think initially they only had a couple of stages and maybe 20, 30 bands, probably of a similar format to Portals, which is now, you know, really successful, mainly math, but other stuff as well. Festival happening in London every year. But no, it's exploded into the, you know, the massive festival that it is now. I think there's well over 120 acts playing over a 4-day period. I think they open up the main stage, Rich, on the Wednesday night, is it?
Yeah.
And bands like June, DVNE, are playing on the Wednesday night, and there's a few others. I think Hippo Tractor, who we saw last year, are back again. They're over from Belgium. That's on the Wednesday. But yeah, it's 4 days of wall-to-wall quality music that fits into probably as many genres of alternative music as you can think of now. But I think in the main, you got to help me out here, Rich, in terms of the main, the headliners, Converge.
Converge, Highland.
Yeah, Converge is genre.
What are we going to do genres? We agreed last week we were going to do genres.
Well, then describe Converge to me.
I'm not that familiar with Converge. You probably know more about them than I do.
Yeah, well, I actually saw them, and I still can't really describe them. Anyway, let's move on. Let's not talk about Converge. But yeah, it's very, very difficult to plot a route through the 3 days because one, there are loads of bands that I'm unfamiliar with, so I'm having to do a lot of research where I'm faced with 2 or 3 bands that I know nothing about playing on stages, different stages simultaneously, rather than the same stages simultaneously, because that would go horribly wrong, I guess. So I'm doing some research there, but then again, there's also probably 20 or 30 bands across the 3 days, 4 days that I would pay to see live. If that makes sense.
Actually, Rich, are you going to see those 30 bands irrespective of who else is playing? Are you like, is anything else going to draw your attention away from those? No?
Yeah, there's very few clashes. I think there's a couple which are disappointing, but again, it's, you know, there's an outright winner for all of the clashes that I've seen across the schedule. I don't know where you are, Rich, on that.
There's no real clashes for me. The bands that I want to see, which range from bands that I would want to see wherever I see them, bands that I've seen 3 or 4 years ago, not heard anything from since, but thoroughly enjoyed and want to go back and see again. There's no clashes. So for me, it's going to be racing from one stage to the other for 2 days at least.
Yeah, these clashing things, and it was Dunk brought it in this year for the first time. Like, I hate the idea of clashing, you know, because if 2 bands you want to see obviously clash, I will watch one show from start to finish. I hate watching half a performance. It just doesn't do it for me, because the second half of every performance is nearly always the best part, the finale, you know, so you're going to cut somebody short there. So yeah, that's the one thing about Arc and all festivals, any big festival, because it is getting bigger every year, let's be honest. Like, I mean, they fit so many bands that there's just overlaps everywhere. It's a tough thing to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, I prepared a top 5 must see, and then a top 5 would really like to see if I get out of bed early enough. And in no particular order, top 5 would be Svalbard, who I absolutely love, despite all my protestations about screamed vocals and you know, not necessarily being into the heavier end of music. They just absolutely do it for me, because again, they've got that combination of clean screamed vocals and musicianship. Brilliant. Brutus, absolutely love Brutus. Loved their album last year. Phenomenal. It will be the highlight of the festival for me when they play What Have We Done, because it was my favourite track by a mile of last year. If you're familiar, Pat. If you're not, check it out immediately, because it's an absolute tearjerker, that one.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Brutus. I like.
Yeah. And then the other 3, I think probably Rich could predict my other 3. I'm going Holy Fawn. I'm going Year of No Light.
Yep.
And Russian Circles.
Yeah. Well, that's 5 of my top 10 ticked off as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Similar bands. I would add on to that Brickerville. I don't know if I've pronounced it right.
I think so.
Arctangent. Sorry, we saw it Dunk
17.
I think in 17, yeah. So I would add them onto the list. I would add High Lung onto the list, who I find fascinating. I don't know how you'd categorise them at all. Birds in Row and Cave In.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I want to see them.
Yeah, some seriously big bands there, lads. It's a super lineup. Go on, Rich. I cut you halfway. Go on.
I'm going to say 6th as well, because I like 6th. And the loudest band I've ever seen live, Swans.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can take Swans a second time. I have tried to listen to them on record, and when some of their tracks are 30 minutes long, I just haven't got the attention span. But I'll make sure my earplugs have earplugs again before we enter the tent.
Well, I do remember Swans as well from Dunk, lads. It was too much for me to handle.
It was too loud.
Yeah, it was just too loud.
At Dunk, if you remember, Pat, we had a Festi Hut. Probably it was the first or second Festi Hut in the row, and it was probably about 100 meters from the main stage. And we were sat lying on our beds in the Festi Hut, and it was almost like being at a normal gig when Swans were playing from that position, because I could control the volume so it wasn't as excruciating lying on my bed. It was almost as if they were playing in front of me still. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, they were too heavy for me as well. But yeah, that's, I mean, Arctangent, I met you back in 2018. Tides of Man were there. Joe Quayle was there. Tides from Nebula. Anathema, who I wanted to see and who were very, very, very poor. It was disappointing, like very disappointing for me, because I would have been such a big fan of them. And also I missed Blue Neck because of that, which fucking galls me still to this day. Australia, as you mentioned, Richie, had her highlighted that on that day, because I was only there for one day. Silent Disco, which I got a great kick out of, actually. I thoroughly enjoyed Silent Disco. It was brilliant. But yeah, that's where the fun ended. That's because I was 7 hours in the cold in the black fucking crunchy road trying to stop a car to get back to my airport, or my hotel in the airport, which was a horror story, like, you know. So a lot more planning on my part next time I do make that trip, because it is very handy. There's a Cork to Bristol flight. You know, it's a no-brainer. Like, I should be making more of an effort.
You should just come and stay in our hotel, mate.
Yeah.
You know, there's probably enough space at the hotel now. So,
no, how it's grown though, like it's you know, I know festivals take a while to gather momentum and stuff, like, but this has really snowballed, like, hasn't it?
It has snowballed, and they're getting some significant bands there, like last year and this year. The headliners are really big. The site itself has grown, and they've moved it around since you were there. The main stages are on the other side now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's grown really well. It's still really fun festival to go to, because sometimes when festivals get too big, they lose that edge for me. It's still really fun. You can still see all the bands if you want to. But yeah, it's grown phenomenally. Yeah.
Rich B, what do you think there?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of other things. As ever with festivals that we love going to, where the music is right up our street, finding a time to actually go and get something to eat is going to be a challenge, as usual, because you'll just end up disappointing yourself, not necessarily the food, but by the band that you've just missed, and everyone comes out and goes, oh, it's the best thing ever, possibly because they're on a wind-up. And the other thing is just a mention for a few other bands who are perhaps not necessarily on a lot of people's radar, but certainly will be on mine. A few of the sort of newer post-rock bands that are coming over. I say coming over because you've got the likes of Barons coming over from Sweden. I think they're one album in. I mean, they're opening up the Arc stage on Thursday.
Wow.
So we've got to be there even for them, Rich. Dinner Celestial Birds are on straight afterwards on one of the other stages. You've then got another Scandinavian band from Norway, Spurv. Are you familiar with those guys? I think we saw them at Dunk.
Absolutely, we did, yeah.
Way back when on the old Stargazer stage. So they're coming over, which will be because I loved their last album.
And they just dropped an album, actually, or they're just dropping it next week, I think, or this week?
Yeah, again, they've only got half an hour, so they might manage 2 tracks in that time, I think, if they're lucky.
Yeah.
But so they'll be worth a lot. I've put, I mean, obviously very well known, but for me, want to see, High Lung. I asked Rich about High Lung recently, and he sent me a couple of videos where there was animal bones and all sorts going on stage and headdresses. So, after a few drinks, I'll certainly be up for that. And Death Heaven are doing Sunbather as well, start to finish, which, again, for black metal is generally regarded, and I would agree, as one of the best albums in the genre. So I think that'll be worth a visit.
Yeah, like what you just even mentioned there, that's between the stuff that's your top 5 and your 5 you haven't heard, bands not that people wouldn't be so familiar with. Like, I'm familiar with a lot of them, but I mean, it's just quality. It's
wall-to-wall.
Wall-to-wall quality, lads, isn't it?
And it was last year as well, to be fair to them. This is 2 years in a row when it's been wall-to-wall.
And what's the capacity for Arctangent, actually? What does it hold?
I'm going to say, I mean, I don't really know. I'm going to say about 5,000 maybe these days. 5,000-6,000, Rich?
Yeah, maybe slightly more, maybe the sort of 7,000 range, but not any more than that, I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah.
And it's not, I mean, the good thing is the Arc stage or the Arc tent is massive. I mean, it's on its own, it's probably got a 2,500 capacity. So generally speaking, I can't remember a time where I've not been able to get into the main stage fairly easily, because you know how much of a frustration that could be at bigger festivals.
Yeah.
So it's just about right in terms of both capacity and also the stages themselves in terms of what capacity those have.
Yeah, I can only think of one occasion where a stage has been obviously too full and there've been people 20, 30 deep outside, and that was Leonardo last year.
Who was it, Rich? Sorry?
Leonardo,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah.
It was stacked out. They should have been on the main stage, but that's the only time I can remember.
Yeah, and again, I suppose compare it to Dunk, lads, because obviously we've compared a lot of stuff to Dunk. So compare Arctangent to Dunk. What would attract one over the other?
Well, I would say the weather. You can enjoy the glorious UK sunshine, unlike in Dunk, where obviously it's not in the UK and also it's not outdoors. However, it's normally pissing down, as we know. So.
We were once stood in the middle of a tent, literally in the middle of a tent, getting wet from horizontal rain.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that well. That was Hemmelby Stormer, wasn't it?
Yes.
Who were very well named for the weather that was happening at the time, because it was definitely Hemmelby storming all over the place.
Yeah, I think lads like yourselves from the UK and me being in Ireland, like we're well used to shit weather when it comes to festivals. The festival in your head is an amazing experience. Musically, it still is, but sometimes you have to take a lot of punishment to enjoy that music.
You do. Yeah. Last year was the first year that it didn't rain properly. In all the years I've been going, it is normally absolutely thrashing it down. And the weather here for the last couple of weeks has been shit, so I'm not hopeful of a dry ATG this year. But you know what? Does it matter? Well, it does a bit. Does it ruin your enjoyment of the bands when you're in the moment? No, of course it doesn't, because you're undercover, you're under a tent. It's just the traversing from one tent to another, because it eventually becomes what I imagine the Somme was quite like, without being shot at or having mustard gas set up on you. But other than that, probably quite similar. So here's hoping that it's kind. But yeah, I mean, versus Dunk, it's very, very difficult to compare the two. Obviously, Dunk's change of venue we've already spoken about. So it would have been easier to compare the two when they were both outdoor festivals, if that makes sense. I think, you know, a word for the organisers, because the passion that the organisers put into both festivals absolutely shines through in terms of how they're put together, how the lineups are, how they look after you, the layout, you know, everything about it is just very, very professionally done these days.
Yeah. So guys, again, comparing the two, like, I know you try and get to every Dunk festival, right? Yeah. That you can. Is Arctangent in that same category that you can't miss it? I
think it certainly is getting that way. At the moment, it's because the lineup's just unmissable. You look at those bands that we just named and you think, I sit here and not go while they're all playing in 3 days. It's becoming that way because it's a bigger festival, and we've come to it a little bit later. There's less of that community that you had. You know, we know so many people from Dunk individually. It's still got a great feel to it, but you know less people on a one-to-one basis.
Yeah.
So the lineup's certainly holding it up there at the moment.
Great. Any more to add on that, Rich, before we wrap up on Arctangent for?
Yeah, well, I mean, answer that question, I'll always go, even if there's a Welsh male voice choir headlining and, you know, somebody else who I'm not quite as infused by supporting, because it's 45 minutes down the road for me. So, and it's a festival, and it's an excuse to go and party with my mates 3 days. So, you know, the lineup being amazing obviously helps tremendously as well. So I can only see it getting better as their reputation continues to grow. You know, they're getting name checked a lot on digital media by, you know, international bands of some standing. So I think that's only going to help in terms of building the lineup for future years. So it's a real success story, and
it is.
Can't wait to get there and drink some cider.
Nice one. And again, lads, it's on your doorstep, I suppose. There's probably no reason not to go, really. 45 minutes away, Rich. I mean,
No, absolutely. It's almost commutable. However, that would stop me from drinking. So that's never going to happen. I'll have to stay
the
home.
same reason I go to Bloodstock every year. It's 7 miles down the road.
Yeah.
Man, you're spoiled, lads. You're spoiled for choice. It's fucking criminal. Right, lads, there you have it. Thanks for that. I enjoyed that chat about Arctangent, guys. Anyone who is going to Arctangent, enjoy yourselves. Anyone who's contemplating it, take it from the two guys. It's an experience as well. It's really something worth going to see. That's it, lads, from the review room for this week. Thanks, Rich M and Rich B, for coming on again as normal. And we'll catch up with you in a few weeks' time. Thanks to Richie Duhig, who will edit and produce this show. And we'll see you in a few weeks' time.
Thank you.
Cheers, lads.
Cheers.
Thanks for that. Take care, lads. Bye-bye.